Don't Speak News was founded upon the premise that we're going to speak about news that nobody else will, that nobody else is covering, or that isn't being covered nearly enough, and yet is important to our daily lives, including this one. From the Wise Wolf over on Substack, here's another story they want us to forget about, which is why this is being held behind closed doors. Trump's Commerce Secretary is testifying behind closed doors right now about his decade of business with a convicted child sex trafficker. They're going to talk about things like the Christmas Eve lunch, the 4-day contract, the photograph the DOJ quietly removed, and the cabinet he still sits in this morning. They had all this information available to them during the confirmation process, but they flip and ignored it and confirmed him anyway. Unbelievable. So here we go. This is the guy we're talking about, Lutnick. So this morning, the United States Secretary of Commerce is sitting in a closed door room on Capitol Hill, answering questions to the House Oversight Committee under threat of subpoena. There are no cameras. There's no live public transcript. The American people, whose trade policy this man oversees, are not allowed to watch their cabinet secretary explain why he would keep doing business with the most famous child sex trafficker in modern American history for 13 years after he claims to have cut ties with him. His name is Howard Lutnick. The reason the doors are closed is that this is the part of the story that Donald Trump's White House and the cable news networks that they share contacts lists with would prefer you never hear in his own voice. The transcript will leak in pieces weeks from now, dressed up in whatever framing the major outlets decide is safest. And by then, you will be busy with whatever the next manufactured outrage is. Exactly, whatever the next war is. And the story will be dead. So Lily and I, that's one of his reporters apparently, are writing this now, this morning, while the deposition's happening. So you can read what's in the documents before the major spin arrives. So the short version's this. On Christmas Eve 2012, Howard Lutnick sailed his wife and 4 small children to Jeffrey Epstein's private rape island for lunch. Isn't that lovely? A second family came along with their own 4 kids, ages 7 to 16. They had lunch. They left. 4 days later, Lutnick signed a business contract with the convicted child sex trafficker whose island they had just dined on. And Lord only knows what they dined on. His signature's on file at justice.gov. The pedophile signature's on the next page. He kept doing business with the man until at least May of 2018, including inviting him to a Hillary Clinton fundraiser in 2015 and accepting a $50,000 donation from him for a charity dinner thrown in Lutnick's honor in 2017. He's told the public on record, in interviews, and on podcasts that he cut off all contact with Epstein in 2005 while he was lying. Imagine that. Government officials lying. They do it every day. If their mouths are flapping, their lips are flapping, they're lying. The DOJ files prove he was lying. He's sitting in a closed-door room right now answering for those lies, and the United States Senate confirmed him to the cabinet without ever seeing the federal vetting file that flagged fraud and money laundering allegations against him. That was never brought up. Isn't that something? These SOBs all knew. Don't tell me they didn't know. They all flippin' knew, and they're all in on it. Because if you or I, an ordinary person, had taken your kids to a registered child sex offender's house this past Christmas Eve and signed a contract with him 4 days later, CPS would be at your door before sundown. The judge would not care that lunch was an hour, that your wife came along, and that you couldn't recall why you went. That last one would in fact get entered into the record as evidence of a guilty conscience, and your bond would be set accordingly, if you even got a bond. Howard Lutnick did all these things. Yet the Senate confirmed him 51 to 45. And that should tell you all you need to know about your corrupt Senate. They're all corrupt. Senate being one of the worst. Wow. And then to go along with that story, we have this one that I put up at don'tspeaknews.com yesterday. This is more about the Epstein files and the Kosovo narco-terrorists that helped traffic over 1 million children for deranged Western elites. This is from Drago Brosnik over at Global Research. It was sent to me yesterday for republication, and so I reposted it after reading it. Because I don't want anyone to forget about this asshole and these files that aren't being released, which by law were supposed to have been released a long time ago. And yet, if nobody is going to enforce that law, what good is the law itself? Just like the Constitution, if no one's going to enforce it, What good is it? It's just a piece of paper. They haven't enforced it unless it suits their needs in years. Man, I wish people would stop saying that on social media. Oh, we got the Constitution. It's dead. And it's been dead for almost a decade. Wake up. So, the aforementioned Epstein files reveal that Albanian narco-terrorist entity that brands itself Kosovo was involved in trafficking at least 1 million children for the needs of Western elites. They're heavily involved in pedophilia, sex trafficking, and, let's not forget, organ harvesting. The children originated from all over the world, according to what's called the Kosovo Children Activity Book. Many of these kids were moved from Thailand and then further to Western countries where their trace is lost. We don't have any exact information on the fate of these children, but given the attempts of the Western authorities to cover up monstrous crimes, we can only imagine what happened to them. Namely, back in 2009, Mexican model Gabriela Rico Jimenez was filmed in distress, screaming and shouting about cannibalism. There's a link to that story right here, in case you haven't seen it, or if you want to refresh your memory. Well, she was taken into custody and then she just vanished afterwards. There are no records of her being in jail, mental hospitals, or anywhere else. She simply disappeared, never to be seen again, and nobody asked any questions. Had Jimenez been clinically insane, she would have ended up in a psych ward. Had she been lying, she would have been prosecuted and convicted. But neither of those two things happened, with the mainstream propaganda machine doing everything in its power to cover up the case. Proclaiming anyone who dared investigate it a crazy conspiracy theorist. Yeah, just like frickin' Pizzagate. Oh, and there it is. Imagine that. 7 years later, the Pizzagate scandal was uncovered involving Hillary Clinton and her 2016 presidential campaign chairman, John Podesta. Yet again, we had another crazy and baseless conspiracy theory, and one that's had me shadow banned since day one of me starting Don't Speak News. The main difference this time was that Russia became the designated scapegoat for everything. So the deeply corrupt DNC screamed at the top of its lungs, the evil Kremlin was behind the leaks in an attempt to smear the good name of the Clinton crime family. And people bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. It was unbelievable. I remember when I worked part-time for a couple of weeks it was a temporary job. It was for an organic farm just outside of Spokane. And the owner of that farm was a Zionist Jew, self-declared Zionist Jew. And he bought this Russiagate thing and everything the Clintons said, everything MSNBC would say at the time. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. He would repeat their talking points to me. It was unbelievable. So people actually believe this stuff. So this later one became one of the cornerstones of this so-called Russiagate, an actual conspiracy theory pushed by the mainstream propaganda machine in order to smear Donald Trump. Well, they should have smeared him with Epstein. It might have stuck. But they didn't do that, and you have to ask yourself why. Because they're all in on it. This is scripted. All of this is scripted reality. It's like a WWE professional wrestling script. They pretend to holler at each other, and they pretend to be enemies, and they all yuck it up and have drinks when the cameras shut off. All manufactured. But anyway, while the debunked Russiagate conspiracy theory was flaunted everywhere by Western media, any mention of the Pizzagate pedophile scandal was severely punished. Yep. This happened to several prominent journalists, including Ben Swann, who was fired for daring to cover Pizzagate. Yeah, we can't have that. We can't have the truth coming out. It should be noted that Wikipedia still brands Pizzagate as a baseless and debunked conspiracy theory while insisting that Russiagate is real. However, thanks to the Epstein files, we now know unequivocally that Wikipedia is a tool of the mainstream propaganda machine, as evidenced by an email that shows how Epstein's associates edited his Wikipedia entry to remove his mugshot and hide his conviction as a sex offender. Still, that's not enough for the mainstream propaganda machine, because it needs to shift attention from Western pedophile cannibalistic elites and blame it all on, well, who else but evil Russia and its bloodthirsty dictator, Putin? Namely, the pathetic Western media are now calling the Epstein files a giant Russia honey trap. Yeah, that's one way they tried to spin it away. There you go. I'll put the links up to all of these, as always. But this is a subject that I don't have a good time speaking about. How could you? If you have any feeling at all, how could you? This is horrible stuff to report on. And yet nobody's doing it. Not that I've seen, other than here at the Wise Wolf, and of course, Drago Bosnick over at Global Research. And let's not forget, by the way, one of the other things that has disgusted me this past week is on social media and all the comments about this guy, King Charles, and how wonderful it was that he was here visiting us here in the United States, and how wonderful and how he should be treated with dignity and respect. And at the same time, he's no better than Trump or the rest of them, or this Howard Lutnick or Jeffrey Epstein. Inside King Charles's and Jimmy Savile's relationship, Jimmy Savile, if you don't know who he is, you should do some research. He was the top, if not the top of all time, sex offender, child sex trafficker in the United Kingdom. And he did a lot of work on children's television shows. And he was Charles's best friend. But of course, Charles says he had no knowledge of Savile's abuses and crimes. Bullshit. It's the only way to say it. Call it like it is. It's complete BS. He knew everything about what Savile was doing, just as Trump knew everything that Epstein was doing, and on I could go with these people. Wow. And yet people are saying, oh, he needs to be treated with dignity and respect. He's the king of England, blah, 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 blah. He's the king of perversion is all he's the king of. He's the king of perversion. And Trump's right there along with him. So you had two of the world's most notorious child sex traffickers and rapists right there together on the main world stage when he came here to visit. And yet people were just singing his praises online. Cults of personality. That's what these people have, and people still fall for it all the time. Unbelievable. Well, that is it for me today. Like I said last month, at the end of last month, I'm going to be taking more time away from all this nonsense. And I've been here in Spokane now for 8.5 years. And I have yet to go hiking in all the wonderful trails that we have all around us here in this area. That changes as of right now, as of today. So that's it for me for today. I just needed to get this news out to you because it's news they're not speaking about, and that's what we do here. As far as the war in Iran and all that stuff, you've got 50 plus other channels that are covering that right now. And the reason I haven't been covering it this week is simply due to the fact that it's back and forth, propaganda on both sides. And it's just, I'm not going to be tossed to and fro like the waves like that. It just doesn't make any sense. So there's all kinds of other channels out there, good channels, solid channels that are covering it. I don't feel the need to. And I am going to get out in nature today. And that will be it for now. God bless, take care. Johnny Storm, Don't Speak News.